Welcome to the 6th video in our virtual grant round series here at Teachers College, Columbia University. In this video we focus on stress in the lives of our LGBT and MSM patients. This stress and coping framework is helpful when we consider what is going on for the healthcare provider, and when we consider what is going on for the patient.
Learning about the stress that LGBT and MSM patients experience in their lives can allow the healthcare provider to have more compassion, understanding, and empathy for what our patients go through as part of their daily life. For anyone who is different or diverse, or not a member of the main dominant group in society, life can be very stressful.
Have you ever been in a social situation where you were the only one like yourself? Or everyone else was from a different cultural group?
Or you were the only man, or the only woman in the group?
Or you were the only person of color in the group? Or you were the only Jewish person in the group? Think about life for a patient who is diverse or different from the dominant norm in a society. Let's step into their worldview and look at life from the perspective of someone who is diverse or different from.
Let's consider the experience of someone who might be a new Mexican immigrant arrival, or an African American from a poor neighborhood. So, a lot of this information goes beyond just being an LGBT or MSM patient. It can be stressful moving back and forth from your home, family, or community, where you are familiar with the culture, and going back to the main society where there is another dominant American culture.
When you are at home, or with your family, or community, you feel comfortable. There, you know the beliefs, practices, traditions, and language being used. You know the terms being spoken, and what they mean.
Then, you may have to go to work, or to a hospital, or clinic where there are other dominant American culture, beliefs, practices, and traditions. A different language, with strange terms, and odd expressions are being used. It can be stressful.
Moving back and forth from what is familiar to what is unfamiliar, or just different, can be very stressful.
For a member of the LGBT or MSM cultural groups, things can be even more stressful.
Let's talk from their perspective. Even when you are in your parents' home, or with your family, it is usually still a heterosexual community. Even when you are at home, you are in a world with a set of beliefs, practices, traditions, and language that are all a part of the dominant heterosexual culture. The LGBT or MSM member of that family may be the only one who is not a part of that heterosexual culture, or their older aunt or uncle, who is also LGBT or MSM, may be in the closet, and they still feel all alone. Then, when you are with your partner or LGBT or MSM friends, you have yet another set of beliefs, practices, traditions, and language being used.
You may feel quite comfortable with your LGBT and MSM circle of friends, who are like main of their family.
But moving back and forth from one social context to another can be stressful.
Something can also happen that makes life even more stressful for members of LGBT and MSM cultural groups.
Some parts of what we are about to describe can be experienced by members of all minority groups. For example, it might also apply for that new Mexican immigrant arrival, or that African American from a low-income family.
We are referring to situations where the person feels bad vibes, or picks up a bad feeling in one of those social contexts. They feel like they are not accepted, or rejected, or being discriminated against.
Then, life becomes even more stressful.
What if you even feel hated, or despised when you go to work? You might even feel hated and despised when you enter your parents' home and family social context.
What if you hear people making jokes, or talking about people like you, in a way that shows their hate or disdain for people like you, when you are at home? Or what if they do this right in front of you, or around you, so you can hear what they are saying?
There is something unique for people who are members of the LGBT or MSM cultural groups. Something else can happen. It happens because being LGBT or MSM is something that may not be visible or obvious, or a person may not be open and out. They might be in the closet.
This something else happens when the people making jokes or showing hate and disdain for people like you are your own family members. It could be your own mother, father, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, or cousins who are joking and showing hate and disdain for people like you.
That can be very stressful.
Some young LGBT or MSM are thrown out of their homes or even disowned and told to never return to their families.
What if it is your boss or co-workers that you hear making jokes and talking with hate and disdain for people like you?
Again, because one's being LGBT or MSM is something that may not be visible or obvious, an LGBT or MSM person might be standing right there when jokes are told or when conversations reveal hatred and disdain for people like them.
Again, all of this negative talk might occur right in front of their face.
Maybe they were thinking about coming out of the closet and starting to be open about their being an LGBT or MSM person.
Perhaps they were thinking about inviting people from work to their marriage ceremony, now that it is legal to get married in their state.
After hearing such jokes, and sensing the hatred and disdain that others hold for members of their cultural group, they might start to change their mind.
They might decide to stay in the closet at work and to keep their marriage private.
If it is a doctor, nurse, psychologist, social worker, or medical technician that you hear making a joke about people like you in an elevator, at the hospital, or medical clinic? What if you recognize them on the subway or waiting in line at the movies, and you overhear their jokes and conversation?
You might naturally begin to wonder if that healthcare provider who will work with in the future might also share those kinds of thoughts about people like you.
You might think about whether or not you really want to ever go back to that hospital or clinic, even if you need medical care.
Or, you might wait too long to go back to that hospital because of your concerns about the hospital workers and what they really think and feel about people like you.
Your condition might be worse when you go to the hospital because you waited until it was absolutely necessary to return.
Those bad vibes kept you away.
All of this makes moving back and forth from one social context to another quite stressful for those who are LGBT and MSM.
So, it makes a lot of sense to adopt a stress and coping framework.
It makes a lot of sense to learn about adaptive, affective, behavioral and cognitive coping responses to stress.
As healthcare providers, we may now have more compassion, understanding, and empathy for what our LGBT and MSM patients experience in life.
We also need to make sure that we are not the provider they ever overhear joking about people like them or saying hateful things.
Because of the potential stress our LGBT and MSM patients experience in life, we might also be able to appreciate how so many of our patients are super resilient and strong. They have mastered coping with all of the stress. So many of our LGBT and MSM patients have emerged empowered to deal with the nonsense that they regularly encounter when living in a heterosexist and homophobic society.
We need to acknowledge their resilience and strength as part of a new way of seeing our LGBT and MSM patients.
Yet, other LGBT and MSM patients may come to us fatigued from trying to cope. Or, they may have internalized some of the homophobia that surrounds them. We can now think about what we learned in this virtual grand rounds and have more compassion, understanding, and empathy. We can also remember what we learned in the 5th virtual grand rounds video and teach them about adaptive, affective, behavioral, and cognitive coping with stress.
We can also let them know that we are available to be a positive and optimistic source of social support.